Namaskar. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome all of you on this special edition of Minutes of the Week. You know, in olden times, and when I say old, I'm referring to the late 80s, when the drug business was booming, illegal drug business, their transportation was booming from Latin America to North America, there was a very efficient technique which was used by the drug lords. They used to ship the large tons of cocaine, the large tons of drug which was shipped. There was a stack which was kept separately to distract the DEAs, to distract the police. In those early days, the police used to feel proud that we have caught a stack of illegal drug, a large stack of illegal drug. But in reality, ladies and gentlemen, that stack of drug was deliberately kept there to distract the police from the main stack. They let the police be happy, and in the process, they transported their stack of drug very calmly and without any hurdle. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the physical world. Today, we're living in a high-tech world inundated with new technologies, artificial intelligence, big data, machine learning are yesteryears. We are talking about metaverse today, and I don't know what next in times to come. But the flip side of the story is that we have also been inundated by corporate frauds of highest magnitude. From which corner they emerge, we have no idea. All we can do is be alert. And who better to assess this alert than independent directors on the board of the companies? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm joined by Rohit Goel, who is the partner of financial advisory at Deloitte Forensics. Rohit, hi, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks, Abhinav. Thanks for having me here. And I'm very well. How are you, Abhinav?
I'm trying to be better with time, Rohit. To our audience, let us tell you that Deloitte, and of course under Rohit's leadership, they have come up with a report which is on corporate fraud and misconduct and the role of independent directors in it. Now, like we highlighted in the earlier conversation, ladies and gentlemen, the technologies deployed in independent fraud, in forensic fraud, and the approach, not only the human factor, but also the technological factor, has evolved in the last decade. Rohit, you recently came out with this extensive report on the role of independent directors on corporate fraud. Can you tell our viewers a brief insight? What were the top insights, if I ask you of the report, which was published about a month and a half ago?
The first key finding is the expected rise in the fraud. 63% of the independent directors responded that current business disruption caused by pandemic would spur the fraud in next 2 years. And the large-scale remote working arrangements, cash flow crunch leading to business operations, and limited awareness among employees about the fraud is going to be key factors for this expected rise. And
so you mean it will be exacerbated? It will increase in the coming times?
Absolutely. And this is not the data point coming from independent directors. If I give you the president of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiner also that we expect not only more fraud to occur, but also existing fraud to be discovered. So the question is not if we will see more fraud, but how much fraud we will see. So on an overall basis, and we as a forensic professional also expected or experienced an increased number of frauds in last year or so. So on an overall basis, there's a strong sentiments around the uncertainty and expected rise in the cases of fraud. That's what the first key findings. I think the second key findings, I think there's a growing realization on accountability and upskilling. So just to give you a data point, around 75% of the independent directors said that they could play a significant role in preventing, detecting, and responding to fraud, and which is quite encouraging. As there is a growing realization within the IT community to take higher ownership on the accountability and responsibility of fraud risk mitigations.
Okay.
Having said that, there's a little paradox here, because majority of independent directors also said that they lack complete understanding of the fraud risk management framework, and they need to be better, and they need to be better equipped to discharge their responsibilities as independent directors, and which includes specific training on fraud risk management, increased visibility on the continuous monitoring protocol, and help from independent experts to screen the businesses.
Okay. So if I take the continue. You have something else to add, I guess.
Yeah, sure. So one more point. I think fraud prevention remains the key as far as the fraud risk strategy is concerned, because it is the stakes are too high. And the last but not the least, I think, and which excites me, that fraud is no longer a phrase which is taboo. I think 63% of independent directors said that they would like to join a company which may have experienced fraud or have reported fraud, which is again very significant trend as compared to the past, while the majority of the ethics and compliance framework remains the key before they choose any company, before they become independent directors. So I think these are 3-4 major data points which came from the survey, Abhinav.
Fine. Rohit, if I take your first point into consideration, a lot of realities have changed post-COVID. You're absolutely right. Now, when you say that post-COVID, the focus of the organizations, and let me first ask you, what was the sample size of the independent directors you spoke?
Yeah. We interviewed 110 independent directors across sectors, listed companies, unlisted companies with significant experience. So I think this number and the quality of independent directors from an experience standpoint is quite significant in this case. So it was more than 100 independent.
I see. Now, if I rightly understand, post-COVID, the focus has been on getting more revenue share, regaining the lost market value, regaining the lost market share. And as you rightly said, because the focus is on enhancing the perennials of the business, the basics of the business, there has been less focus on handling corporate fraud. Now, I gave that example in the first part of our conversation of how the drug laws used to fool the DEA and the police administration. In today's times, things have largely the human behavior remains the same. The approaches and the way these attacks are made, the way fraud is being conducted, either in organized circles or in unorganized circles, remains the same. Is there any change in the way you, apart from the independent directors and of course the people you've spoken to, is there any seriousness from the top management in handling corporate frauds in today's times? Because if I rightly understand, you've spoken to most of the listed companies, a large number of frauds largely go underreported over. Corporates do not report the large number of frauds. So do you think from the management standpoint, there has been a serious consideration in how they look at these corporate frauds or in a way handling these frauds?
Yeah, I think great questions. And I agree with you. If I look at historically, last 5-7 years, I think you're right. There was a significant number of cases which are not unreported. And what you saw in the media is just tip of the iceberg. But I think the landscape has changed significantly in the last 4-5 years, given this regulatory impetus, given the high scrutiny. And I think the management and the board have also understood fraud as a strategic topic for growth. And because it has been also experienced that it's not a issue of risk. It's an issue of strategic growth and value preservation. Over the 4 or 5 years, what we experienced that there's a higher acceptability within the senior management as far as the fraud risk management is concerned.
Now, Rohit, if I see the top result of the survey of the report, cyber threats and cyber security form a perennial part of it. In fact, it occupies the topmost position. What kind of cyber attacks are we talking about? Are these phishing emails? Number one. Number two, are they leaked information? Are they espionage? What kind of fraud are we talking about when it comes to targeting of corporates?
Yeah. So, you are right that cyber crimes top the list in the top category of fraud based on the survey. And not only the survey, but I think we've also experienced the same in our day-to-day working. And it's a mix of all. I would say it's not only restricted to phishing. It's only not restricting to malware. I think it is encompassing And a lot of interesting and new fraud risk schemes are emerging, like voice. You have noted in the media one of the recent case where fraudsters have manipulated the voice of a senior executives, right? It's a cyber attack, for espionage of confidential insider information of the company. I think it's a mix of all. It's a mix of all, which do not only include the cyber attacks, but also breaches, leakage of confidential information, and there's a new and emerging fraud risk, which are typologies which are emerging day by day. So I would say it's a mix of all, and I would still believe that as far as technology is concerned, we would see more number of cases in coming future, which is driven from technology than we saw in the past.
If I ask you, most of the corporate ecosystem in a market like India, it's largely small scale. I'm not talking about the big corporates who have access to Deloitte or maybe some other big auditing firms, or maybe firms which have a direct threat analysis system who can make them aware. Largely, we are living in a country where the internet exposure for most of the corporates is having a website, most. Now, they're not aware of the corporate risks of the frauds which they might entangle in the nearby future. My question to you will be twofold. Firstly, how much time do you think it will take for this kind of awareness to reach to the perennial startup ecosystem of this country, especially startups which are operating from tier 2 and tier 3 towns? I'm not talking about the big corporates. That's one. Number two, what changes can be sought after, not only from the corporate side, but also from the government side, to make this awareness an everyday phenomenon so that we can avoid such corporate intensity of such corporate frauds going forward?
Absolutely, Abhishek. Abhinav, I think this is a great question again. So in terms of part of the question, as far as the small sector is concerned, small scale MSME sector, I think I would put that way. I think fraud does not need any introduction, right? If you look at the newspapers every day, I think it is every day on a regular basis, you have headlines reporting any sort of frauds, right? So I think as far as the visibility or awareness about the fraud general public is concerned, or MSME is concerned, I think it's increasing very fast. Everybody knows that fraud has become very pertinent in part of the life, be it social media, be it individual dealing with individual bank account, be the corporate, be the large organization. So I think the awareness has increased. As far as the MSME is concerned, I guess I understand that they may not have a sophisticated ecosystems to handle those, but I don't see, when I talk to MSMEs, I think they're equally aware and concerned about the risk of fraud. And so I don't think there's an issue at the awareness level, but I think that awareness level is centered around a handful of people within those organizations. That's the challenge. And since those organizations have a lot of employees who work in the are the backbone of the small setups of MSMEs, I think this is where the awareness of issues reside, and this is where the MSMEs needs to work. We also work with a lot of MSMEs to impart training on the fraud prevention techniques and detection techniques, and I think my view is that over the last 3-4 years, I think MSMEs are also equally concerned, while they are not, because of genuine business consideration and growth aspirations, they are not able to spend so much. But I think they are equally concerned and aware about the the risk of fraud.
So we should be seeing likely more investments, not only from the big corporates, but also from the small MSMEs in countering fraud and sophisticated cyber attacks or any form of attacks which are dangerous and threatening the very nature of the company. Rohit Goel, thank you so much for your time and speaking to us. This was really insightful.